The containment seals slammed shut with a pneumatic hiss. Red strobe lights bathed the isolation bay in the universal color of a Class 9 biohazard emergency. Inside the reinforced glass cylinder, the subject should have been dead. The atmospheric filters shrieked, overwhelmed by toxic airborne metrics, while the primary AI screamed for immediate incineration. Then the subject tapped on the glass. "You'll want to hear how this anomaly ends. Trust me on that. Only 20 minutes ago, Medical Wing East had been aggressively boring. Thal had been calibrating a retinal scanner, expecting nothing more dangerous than a standard fungal rash from a passing cargo hauler. Then the Terran walked in. Her name was Yuki. Designation: JB-31 Butcher. She carried a ceramic vessel. It sloshed with a hot, dark liquid. She set it down on the edge of the testing suite. The faint, slightly sticky ring of condensation left by Yuki's ceramic mug on Thal's pristine, sterilized diagnostic console felt like a deliberate provocation. Thal ignored it. He initiated the standard ingress protocol. "Step onto the pad," Thal instructed. His auditory mandibles clicked in minor irritation. Yuki smiled, a bearing of blunt, calcium-dense teeth. "Sure thing, Doc." She stepped up. The scanner engaged. A beam of pale blue light swept over her. "Skin, tissue, flora." The console chimed. Then it buzzed. Then it began to violently eject physical error tickets. Thal stared at the readout. His secondary heart skipped a beat. The biological sensor identified trillions of active, aggressive microorganisms thriving in her gut. It registered as a localized plague. The initial pathogen count was lethal, unless the organism was already undergoing rapid decay. No, she was humming. Impossible. He reset the matrix. Scanned again. Worse. Acid levels in her central digestive organ were concentrated enough to strip the hull plating off a light shuttle. "Is the machine acting up?" Yuki asked. She leaned casually against the reinforced glass. Beneath her skin, a metabolic furnace burned at an absurd 37 degrees Celsius. Thal's chromatophores flushed pale blue, a physiological fear response. He forced the pigmentation down. "Do not move," Thal said. His synthesized voice remained deliberately flat. "You are hosting a localized apocalypse." She laughed. The sound registered on his decibel meter as a low-frequency concussive wave. "Just a little indigestion. Had some spicy noodles on the transport." Noodles. A translation error. It had to be. Thal activated the adrenal and stress monitors. He deployed the kinetic response simulator, a holographic predator designed to trigger universal fight-or-flight chemistry, materialized in the bay. Most species collapsed. Others secreted thick defense pheromones. Yuki looked at it. She took a sip from her mug. Her heart rate barely elevated. Adrenaline flooded her system, but instead of inducing shock, her neural pathways weaponized it. The diagnostic readout showed her pain receptors actively muting, her muscle fibers tightening into dense kinetic coils. She was not preparing to flee. She was calculating the structural integrity of the hologram's neck. Thal backed away from his own console. "Test 3, Thal muttered. He overrode the safety locks manually. Neurological baseline. He fed the data back to the central hub. The AI rejected it outright. A low whine pitched from the server rack. The medical AI, designated Node 7, couldn't categorize the contradictions. High acid, lethal bacteria, weaponized adrenaline, a cheerful disposition. It began to loop. Node 7 text feed flooded the secondary monitors. Warning: contradictory biomass. Presence of hydrochloric acid. Confirmed. Internal temperature. Fever threshold. Recommendation: jettison. Thal locked the bay doors. The station protocol required 11 specific clearance metrics for a JB-31 classification. She had failed 4 by simply existing. "Run the skeletal diagnostics," Thal ordered his assistant drone. The machine whirred. It returned an immediate error code. Dense. Too dense. Calcium phosphate woven into micropillars. Subject's endoskeleton is capable of withstanding micrometeorite impacts without fracturing, the diagnostic drone reported. Yuki tapped her foot. The rhythmic impact registered on the floor seismometers. Are we almost done? She asked. I have a shift in the processing bay. Processing bay. She handled dead flesh. It made terrifying clinical sense. Thal initiated the neurochemical scan. He needed to see her brain chemistry under simulated trauma. He triggered a mild sensory overload pulse, standard for evaluating neurological resilience. Yuki blinked. Was that a flashbulb? Did you take a picture? The readout spiked. Dopamine. Serotonin. She was finding the diagnostic assault amusing. We need a localized tissue sample, Thal said. His vocal nodes vibrated out of sync. The dermal scanner cannot penetrate the outer epidermal layer. He deployed the automated phlebotomy arm. The mechanical limb, tipped with a microsaw designed to pierce rigid chitin and thick scales, extended toward her exposed forearm. Yuki didn't flinch. She watched the spinning blade approach with detached interest. The diamond-tipped blade whined as it made contact with Yuki's epidermis. Sparks actually flew. Thal adjusted his ocular lenses, convinced the optical sensors were misaligned. The microsaw, designed to slice through Starship-grade carbon plating and the rigid chitin of deep space miners, was struggling to bypass her dermal matrix. It wasn't just physical density. It was elasticity. The skin yielded, distributing the localized kinetic force across a wider surface area, before springing back against the cutting edge with stubborn resilience. It took a full 40 seconds of applied friction to pierce the upper dermal layer. The machine applied maximum allowable pressure. Tickles, Yuki observed. The phlebotomy arm finally breached a surface vein. A minuscule drop of red fluid, thick, iron-heavy, and violently oxygenated, was extracted into the containment vial. The automated arm immediately retracted, slotting the vial into the specialized biometric analyzer for deep sequencing. Thal exhaled, a shaky release of compressed gases. The hard part was over. He was wrong. The dull, rhythmic scratching sound of Yuki, casually tapping her fingernails against the pathogen scanner's casing while it violently overheats, filled the bay. She was bored. Protocol dictated immediate incineration of the containment bay, but how do you authorize sterilization when the hazard is? She just asked for a refill. Can I get some more coffee while we wait? She asked, gesturing with the half-empty ceramic mug. Thal did not answer. He couldn't. His visual receptors were locked onto the biometric analyzer. It was supposed to map her genetic markers. Instead, the machine was vibrating. The red fluid within the vial was actively reacting with the chemical testing agents, neutralizing them with hostile efficiency. It was consuming the sequencing array from the inside out. The diagnostic readouts cascading across the secondary monitors painted a portrait of a creature forged in a high-gravity Deathworld, an organism whose very survival depended on an internal biological ecosystem so violently competitive and adaptable that it effortlessly and passively dismantled our most advanced medical-grade testing agents just by bleeding. The analyzer's internal temperature spiked exponentially. The cooling fans shrieked, struggling to vent the sudden burst of thermal energy. The sample is generating its own exothermic reaction, the diagnostic drone reported. Chemical agents nullified. Biostructure resisting categorization. Thal tapped frantic commands into his console. Isolate the vial. Vent the excess heat. Negative. Physical jam in the extraction port. The thermal expansion has fused the primary locking mechanism. This was a catastrophe. If the analyzer breached under pressure, the sheer concentrated toxicity of the Terran sample would compromise the entire medical wing. Thal's digits flew across the tactile interface, attempting to trigger the manual override. Nothing happened. Black smoke began to curl from the analyzer's primary vent. And now, standing securely behind the reinforced seals under the strobing red lights of a Class 9 emergency. The system screamed for her immediate incineration. Thal was paralyzed, watching the analyzer prepare to detonate its thermal failsafes. Then she tapped on the glass. "Hey, document, open the secondary hatch." Thal stared, his chromatophores flashing white with panic. "The containment protocol is absolute. The sample is locked. If the thermal mass breaches the casing, the resulting vapor will." "It's just a jammed port," Yuki said. "Open the little slot. The one for the food tray." Thal, driven by a panicked instinct he couldn't clinically justify, triggered the narrow slide hatch. Yuki didn't hesitate. She looked at her ceramic mug, the vessel that had held her corrosive morning beverage. She slammed it against the reinforced bulkhead. The ceramic shattered. Thal flinched, expecting the violent kinetic impact to trigger further security lockdowns. Instead, Yuki casually picked up the largest, sharpest shard. The curved edge tapered into a vicious, jagged point. She approached the smoking analyzer. The machine was a technological predator 3 times her mass, threatening to unleash a localized firestorm. She didn't change her pace. She wedged the ceramic shard into the fused seam of the extraction port. Her arm muscles corded, dense and terrifyingly efficient. With a single, brutal twist of leverage, the fused metal snapped open. The jammed vial popped out, landing perfectly in her waiting palm. The analyzer instantly vented its thermal buildup. The siren abruptly died. She had performed precision microsurgery on a Tier 4 diagnostic machine using a broken drinking vessel. Thal sagged against his console. The station protocol required 11 specific clearance metrics. The Terran had failed every single one of them. She was a biological impossibility, a walking biohazard who drank acid and broke machines with her blood. "So," Yuki said, tossing the intact vial through the slide hatch onto Thal's desk, "did I pass?" The Galactic Transport Authority received a frantic transmission from Medical Wing East 3 minutes later. It wasn't a clearance form. It was an emergency petition for a new species exception clause, officially reclassifying Terrans from standard biological entity to mobile extreme hazard event, requesting that they be entirely exempt from standard testing indefinitely. The medical bay was finally silent, save for the low hum of the air scrubbers working to filter the smoke. On the sterile metal floor, resting beside the charred housing of a multi-million credit diagnostic scanner, lay the jagged fragments of the drinking vessel. It was no longer a container for warm liquid. A mundane piece of fired clay had become the only surgical instrument capable of surviving a human.